Hey everyone, and welcome to another Sasquatch Theory Bigfoot interview. On today's show, we have Greg from Florida, and he wanted to share his Bigfoot encounters from Florida State, Georgia, and New York. He had quite a few strange experiences and encounters in these areas, and I thought that they were really interesting, and I'm really glad that he contacted me. Sometimes in your life, you will just see something that you cannot explain, and that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people encounter these Sasquatch creatures, and they don't know what to make of it. And there's a lot of other strange things going on out there as far as other cryptids, aliens, and people see these things and wonder, what the heck did I just see? If you guys enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please be sure to like this interview, subscribe to the channel, follow the podcast, and I really appreciate everyone's support. If you have a Bigfoot encounter or any cryptid encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive straight into Greg's Bigfoot encounters here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, Greg, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's no problem. Greg, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Sure. Excellent. Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. My name's Greg. I'm from Central Florida. I'm a native. And I'm generally a climber arborist. Native of Florida, like I said. I prefer the outdoors, but I'm kind of stuck here in the city, but I have some outdoor experience, so that's kind of about where I hail from here. I've been fortunate enough to be at least in the country on occasions, and that's where, you know, things have happened for me. I guess with my, you know, to avoid any any confusion, I guess I'd probably start with where I was in upstate New York, about 1984, and that was my first experience. I've had two sightings in my life in two different states, but my first experience, I think, is related. I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of do now in hindsight. But I was in New York as a 17-year-old, and actually, to give some context, the day prior to the sighting, I was on a dairy farm. My cousins owned a dairy farm, and I stayed with them. And one of the cows didn't come back, you know, to the barn with all the others. And it was due to freshen, which means, you know, have a calf. And so my cousin said, you know, we better go look for that cow. We got time before it's time to milk them. So let's run on up to, you know, the pasture they were in and see if maybe we can find her. Sometimes they, you know, it varies. They will have their calves right with all the other cows, and sometimes they bust loose and they go somewhere, you know, unexpected and try to do it alone. Cows are peculiar, but he had a hunch, and, you know, they always trust their hunch. And of course he was right. We went up to the pasture where they were in, and sure enough, we saw break in the barbed wire. Just a little bit inwards was the cow. We could hear it kind of bellowing. It was giving birth. Well, fortunately, my cousin and I showed up because she was breached and wasn't doing well. So my cousin, you know, like most farmers, are pretty much veterinarians as well. And that's their bread and butter, you know, no pun intended, but that's something that they have to handle on their own in the moment. There was no help other than him that was any closer. So he handled it. You know, calf came out fine, worked everything out. We were quick to kind of get moving because it was getting a little later in the day. And we crawled back through the fence, jumped on a tractor. I held the calf on my lap while Mom kind of followed by in the tractor, kind of kept intervening on the way down to the barn. Had to keep hitting the clutch to stop from running into mom, but we just basically, I held the calf while on the toolbox in the fender while he drove back down to the barn. Well, the fence was broke, obviously, because the cow kind of plowed through it. These are 1,200-pound animals. When they want to, they will. So it wasn't far in the brush, but a bit in there. So the fence was damaged. And I remember my cousin saying, well, I'm going to have to come back and repair that fence. It's just too bad to where another cow will take advantage of it. So the next day he went somewhere else, and I thought, well, I got nothing going on. I'll go up there and repair that fence. Looking to try to be helpful. So instead of the tractor, I took the horse. My cousin had a horse, and he and I by that time had developed some kind of relationship, and I enjoyed riding him. So I thought this is a good way to do it. So I throw the pliers and some bale and twine and a little spool of wire in my back pocket, saddle up the horse, and away up the mountain I go. And it's the last hayfield on the property. It's a 200-acre farm, and it's attached in the very back by 9,000 acres of state land. And it was called the New Michigan State Preserve or Park at the time. And that's all I knew about it. Never really went up there. It was a hayfield up there, right where the cow breached through the fence. So I went to repair the fence, and as I was coming up there, I've got a squeaky saddle, probably, older than the day is long. I mean, and it's just a very rudimentary saddle. It was just dry as could be. It was just making noise and squeaking. And I remember getting up to where the fence was, and as soon as I went to throw my leg over and step off of him, his ears went back. So as my foot hit the ground, he starts backing up and slinging his head, and he ain't having it. And I'm just fixing to, hitch him against a small tree. And at that point, I realized he's ready to bail on me. He's taking off. So I hang on with all I got, 17-year-old. I'm not walking back. So as he's pulling backwards and rearing his head, I'm just hanging on to these reins with one hand best I can until he pulls me down to my stomach. I'm on the ground. He's still pulling back. And in one last pull, he rips his head back, and there goes the reins out of my hand. And I'm laying there on the ground on my belly, and I watch this horse, kind of like a dog's ears flying up. I watched the stirrups as this thing just took off across this 50-acre field out of my sight, and there goes my ride. So in hindsight, I didn't know what that was all about, but it was kind of unusual for him to freak out in that moment. Mind you, I'm right by this hedge line. That's when I just said, well, it is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and repair this fence, as I did. And then as I was repairing the fence, I saw what looked like an old fence or something they used to make out of shale rock from the earth up there. And I looked in the woods, never really gone in the woods. There's a lot of property around 200 acres, so I didn't really walk into every piece of that ever. I was well versed with that hayfield. I had hayed it before, but I didn't know it was beyond that hedge line. So after I repaired the fence, I crawled through and I said, I wonder what that is. And I walked back there to the structure, and as I got closer, I didn't know what it was. I mean, again, I'm just a city boy from Florida. I'm in a new area. I'm really not well versed in what's going on. I know I got country in my blood, but I don't know what I'm looking at. And I just get over there, and I believe in hindsight that it was a cistern. I didn't know what that was, but I just remember leaning over and looking in, and it was full of water, and it was like a square of shale rock that was stacked probably 3 foot high all the way around, maybe 10 by 10. I just remember looking in there. It looked like black water, but it was interesting. I remember leaning on the side, just kind of looking in there. I just thought it was interesting. And I kind of had to crawl through there a little bit because there was a little bit of low-lying shrubs through there, but it wasn't too bad to get back there. And as I was kind of looking into the water, I seen my own reflection. I thought, man, what is this? It was curious. And, I was just exploring. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I caught this, I was enveloped with this ominous feeling, as if something was watching me. And even more to that, as if I was prey. I don't know how to really explain it, but whatever it was, this presence was behind me and all encompassing me. It was, I was overcome with this feeling I never had. Again, I'm 17. I don't even know what's happening right now. I'd say it was a metaphysical event. I didn't know exactly what was happening. I just knew it wasn't a feeling I had ever known. And I just remember feeling like my face was melting, very hot. I felt like somebody slammed a bed of spikes into my back. Just the feeling of dread. I mean, if you take the feeling of being watched and compound that by 1,000, because it was more than just being observed. I was scrutinized. It was an evil presence. It was very ominous. It was a malevolent feeling behind me, and I didn't know really what to do. This pause was probably maybe no more than 30 seconds, where I was just kind of trying to understand what was going on, and I didn't know really what to do, but I had the knowledge come over me not to look back. Don't turn around. And I don't know where that came from. My curiousness at the time was clearly I wanted to turn around and see if there's nothing, or where's this coming from. But there was an awareness not to, and not to lock eyes with whatever was behind me. There was no smell. There was no sound. There was no sight of anything peculiar prior to this feeling. And my curiosity was squelched just by sheer primal fear, and I never looked back. I started slowly turning, walked from I could see the meadow and the hayfield, through the trees, and I just kind of made, not running, not rushing. I just walked without ever looking back or thinking to look back, and I was waiting any second for something to go wrong, but all I could do is what my mind told me, just to leave. And I had about another 30 feet to go to get out of these trees and back to the meadow. I got through the fence, and I've got to say, I never looked back all the way through that hayfield. I was still overcome with that same feeling and just trying to sort out what was that. But I still didn't have I still wasn't sure, even after getting out in the open, in the daylight, and leaving that hayfield, that it was clear now to turn around. I didn't even take the chance. That's how much it oppressed me. I just knew that I was not at the top of the food chain in that instance. Now, in hindsight, I'd like to stress, when I was repairing the fence, there was flies flying around. There was, of course, from the day before, there was still placenta from the calf and the birth that was still in that area. That definitely smelled. I could smell that. When I walked away to the cistern, it was probably maybe 40, 50 feet away from that area, because I remember walking left, and because I saw the rock pile, and I was just curious about that rock pile. But all the less, there was a scent there. Also, that was a great watering hole. I don't know, too many animals that could get a drink out of that thing. You would have to be quite tricky about it, because if you couldn't get out of this thing, I don't know. I mean, a large creature could reach his hand in and get himself a handful of water. I don't imagine anything that couldn't climb up that wall would want to jump in there and get a drink. But with that said, I'll also, when I went to dismount that horse, those ears went back unusually, and he was not having it. I was not tying him up to a tree right there at that hedge line. And at the moment, I never thought about that, or, again, this is all hindsight. But something was a little different about him that day. And I will say, I had a spiritual connection with that horse, and I think me. But that was, and he was quick to, he had his days when he wasn't having me, and he let me know. But he had his days where he was all good with me. So that was just not the time of me stepping off. That wasn't normal. Usually when I stepped off, he was always good with that, and that was rare. And at the time, I didn't think none of them. I just think, he's just not having it today. And boy, I really didn't want to walk back, so I held on with everything I had, and it just wasn't enough. I remember that last snap of his neck, and he was just hell bent that I was not going to retain him there, and he made it so. But that was also striking me as peculiar. Did he know something I didn't know? Did he sense something I didn't sense? Well, in hindsight, I don't know. I'll leave that to anyone else to kind of try to figure out. But all these things together, like I say, the smell. I could see a creature go into that smell. It's high protein in that placenta. I hate to say that, not meaning to be gross, but certain animals will be drawn to that. And creatures, maybe, I don't know. But a perfect honey hole there for water. It was definitely a good distance inside the hayfield, probably a good, like I say, 30 to 40 feet inside. You couldn't see, I could barely see the rock structure from the fence repair. I just saw it, lightly, and just enough to say, hey, I got to go check that out. What is that? But in any sense, it was very ominous, and I sensed pure evil, nothing good about what was behind me or what was around me. I can't say there was anything behind me. I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything other than, it was nothing other than a feeling that I'd never felt before at 17 years old. And at that age, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I'd never experienced fear like that. I wasn't a person that watched horror movies and put these crazy thoughts in my head. And it just came out of nowhere, this thought. And I didn't know about that at the time. I sort of wrote it off as a weird thing. It didn't stop me from traveling the property after that. But I didn't discuss it with nobody because, really didn't know what to say. But that was my experience in New Michigan State Forest in New York, upstate, in 1984. And that kind of sheds a little light after, years went by. I started making a little more sense of that, especially after my first visual sighting, which was in about 2013. There I was involved in a ceremony going on in Florida near the Everglades, in an area called Factahatchee Strand. Very much a rainforest, swampy, very interesting climate there. And it was very unusual. What was going on is there was going to be a ceremony very deep into this park, state park, or preserve, I guess it is. And it was probably a 5-mile drive to where we went to have this ceremony with multiple cars. And by that, I mean there was probably 40 cars in line going down a grass fire lane that they make to, stop fire from going from one forest to another. They do that in many forests around, especially state parks. And it was a smooth grass road. Apparently, I'm sure trucks came out there with mowers and mowed that occasionally because it was very smooth ride. We were cruising along at a pretty good clip, just following the leader on out to where we would finally park and the ceremony would begin. My wife was driving. I was riding in the passenger seat. Having drove there from Central Florida to South Florida, I was kind of tired of driving, so I let her take over for this next little round. I just kind of wanted to stretch my legs and relax. My son was behind me in the back seat, and I believe we were we had a 97 Tahoe at the time. And so I'm just kind of riding along, and my wife's just following the cars in front, and we're cruising through this grass road, probably I'd say 15 minutes into riding, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this isn't close. This is a heck of a ride. I feel like we've gone several miles already, and it just surprised me how far we ended up. I'd never been there. I didn't know what to expect. So as we're driving, I'm just, like anyone, you're just kind of looking at the beautiful scenery left and right, and I'm on the passenger side, so clearly I'm looking to the right. And lo and behold, suddenly there's there's a patch of clearing that 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 kind of just appeared where a tree had fallen down. I guess the tree fell down and it kind of made a wake where it fell. I guess some of the lower limbs might have broke branches and lower shrubs uh, in to make this clearing, because it was just like a little hole cut out, and then it went right back to thick again, almost a straight line of trees and foliage. But in this one little area, there was an opening, and the tree could have fell 5 years ago. It didn't need to be a fresh fall. I don't know, but there wasn't foliage there. Lo and behold, I'm looking to the right, and my peripheral vision kicks off. Something's there, and as I look, the strangest thing, I see these two little creatures running. One's about a step behind the other one, and they're just running. I probably had this whole sighting for 4.5, 5 seconds, but I saw these two little guys running, girls, whatever they were, towards this tree, and they were going to run right into this tree stump. It was a very large tree, probably 30 inches across and maybe 2.5 foot high off the ground, and they were running right towards it. And I'm watching them run, and I'm seeing their mechanics, and I see their little feet kicking up. And I'm processing this, and I'm like, my jaw's dropped, I'm sure, and I'm just watching. And suddenly, one of the creatures catches the other kind of right before impact on that log, and both little creatures grabbed, put their hands on this log and flipped their legs over the log opposite each other, not to kick each other, like they'd done this before, like they were siblings, and they just had this innate ability to work together, and threw their legs opposite each other and landed like never missing a beat, and just continued that run completely fluently. And I mean, when I say fluently, I can't even describe how fluent these little things were. It was incredible, and it was fascinating. And then I probably saw them take only about. After they cleared the log, and again, it's like they didn't hit the ground and stop. They hit the ground running when they cleared that log and just kept going. And for about another 1.5 seconds, I had a visual of them, and that's it. They were back in that thick foliage and out of my sight. I could never really see them again. At that point, I'm processing, what did I just see? And I remember my son saying, "Dad, what was that?" He's right behind me. And I look back right behind me to over my right shoulder, and I see him looking out the same window I was. And I said, "Did you see that?" And he didn't answer me. And then I realized we're going all along at a very good clip. And so I looked over at my wife over her shoulder, leaned over to see how fast she was going. And she was in between 20 and 25 mile an hour on the speedometer, going down this grass road. Like I said, it was pretty smooth. It wasn't bumpy. It was just like almost going down a regular paved top. And I just remember thinking, these are little 3 to 4 foot creatures. I would say 3.5 foot if I had to be dead on. They were not big, but the fluency was incredible. They seemed to be in a playful state. They, at the time, I realized, were these little people? Were these Bigfoot? But baby Bigfoot? I don't really know, and to this day I don't know, and perhaps I'll never know. But that is what I saw. And I saw the pads of their feet were tan, their faces were tan. I couldn't make out real good distinction on their face, but if I had to, I saw their hands were tan on the palm part. They were kind of fuzzy, a little hairy fuzzy, I guess you could say. They were kind of a tan blonde, a little bit of a mix of color, almost even some white in there, very faint, more tan than anything. Definitely tan skin, tan face, tan hands, tan bottom of the feet. But I realized they passed us. Okay, these little things passed us. I mean, Usain Bolt, which runs amazingly fast. I don't know if they could stand a chance against these little critters. They they just made this look so simple and so fluent, and it was so incredible. And I realized they passed us. They had to be doing near upwards between 25 and 30 mile an hour. Now, I want to keep you definitely. I want to keep everyone in mind. These things are 3.5 foot tall, so their legs are very short, and for them to go that fast and not look cartoonish, because it didn't. It looked fluent. They had an arm pump just as we do, and their body was erect. They were running bipedal, and that's basically in a nutshell what I saw for 4.5 seconds. I'd say 5 seconds, um, and I never got to see him again. But also, I want to break down uh, the situation. It's a very peculiar thing going on. There's 40 cars traveling down this fire lane in an area where there's never been, probably ever, in years and years, that many cars traveling at that great a speed to this. This ceremony was unusual. It was unique. And other than seeing a truck or two coming out there with mowers on it, I could see that wouldn't really ruffle your feathers, let's say. But all this commotion and all this excitement in the forest that day, in the swamp, is what I believe they were responding to. They wanted to get to the lead car and just see what was going on. I recall being a child, and a lot of people can relate. I remember riding around on our bicycles with my friends, and all of a sudden, sirens would go by in a fire truck, and we'd say, "Let's follow them." And it was just excitement. You couldn't help yourself but to follow. Usually the truck just kept going. You could never catch the truck. It's over with. You turn around, go back to what you were doing. But that's why I believe they were adolescents. I just feel like it was very playful and very curious to what they were doing. They were mission driven, and they were going to the first car. They were passing us. And I think it was a fluke. They didn't want to be seen, but this clearing probably surprised them. Now, I don't know what was beyond that clearing. Was there mother Bigfoot, cruising back there? What did my son see? Did he see exactly what I saw? Did he see something else? What else is peculiar is I asked my son what he saw later, and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." So he did not want to discuss it. I don't think he had the place in his mind to want to admit to what he saw, even though at the moment, even my wife says, "Yeah, I remember him saying, 'Did you see that, Dad?'" Um, I never really pushed him on it because I can see where uh, it's a subject that he wasn't ready for. It was a place in his mind he wasn't ready for, and I never pushed it. But I don't know what he saw. Did he see what I see, or was there something bigger in the back? I was focused on these two little creatures, and nothing else entered my vision. That's all I could see. Like I say, I think I had 4.5 to 5 seconds uh, of that sighting, and I feel very blessed for it. And it's that knowledge of knowing, hey, this isn't a monkey, this isn't a bear, this isn't a cougar, this isn't something. I know what I'm looking at. My peripheral vision and my observancy skills have always been good. I've always had good vision. Uh, I, there's no doubt as to what I saw, uh, and I can tell you, uh, there are things out there that exist that we have not been told about, and we haven't been, for whatever reason, they haven't been honest about. And I've seen this with my own eyes, and to this I can attest. And it was quite amazing, and I feel very blessed that I saw this. It was very eye opening. It was very playful. Uh, it was. It kind of scratched an itch. I've always been curious. I've always known, going through school that, they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. And as we get older, we realize, we're so jaded. We were pitched a narrative in school, and to this day, we're still narrative. It was just interesting for my own growth to see something that isn't supposed to be right before my eyes, and I feel very blessed, and I always will, that I saw what I saw. And, I just was amazed by their athleticism. They were little Olympians, if you ask me. They were so it was incredible to see. It was what a sight. Um, I would hope that anybody that doesn't believe in the unknown could see something like that to squelch their lack of ability to believe, because that did it for me. I didn't need to see anything anymore. That made me believe.
Were these creatures hairy?
Uh, they weren't so hairy. They were kind of more fuzzy, to speak. Uh, they were young, so maybe the hair wasn't long yet. But yeah, they it was hair, but it was kind of had an appearance of fuzz. But it was thick. It was all over them except for where it wasn't supposed to be. Like their face, I could see a tan face. The face was kind of a blur, but it was tan in color, uh, like that of a young chimpanzee. Same color as a young chimpanzee. And but they were very in their run. Their back was very straight, and obviously their legs were moving along, and I wasn't focusing on that. I was kind of focused on from the waist up, and their back stayed very straight, which was, it seemed like they would be leaning forward, but they really weren't. Their back was very straight, and their athleticism was just incredible.
So they were upright?
Yes,
Okay.
bipedal.
At any point were they on all fours?
No, I never seen any of that. Only when they hit that tree trunk, Miguel. That's when they did their opposite leg throw. The other one caught the other one, like it was just about a step behind. And it's funny because they both planted their hands on that trunk at the same time. I saw the leader hit, and then that other one caught him just at the time of impact on that trunk. And they threw their legs over opposite each other. And again, like I say, they didn't stop when they hit the ground. Their legs just kept going, and they kept going. And they were they were just fascinating.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it sounds like what you said, two juveniles playing and running along the car and trying to hide from being seen. Do you think that this was a Sasquatch? Were they Sasquatch creatures, or do you think that they were little people? Typically, I hear little people reports up north, but I think they're all over the place.
Man, that's why I heard the same thing, Miguel. And again, if I go with my gut, I think they were little big feet, and I call them little feet for that reason. But I can't. Like at first, I said those were little people, those because I told my son, "Did you see the little people?" And that's when he said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Dad." He just kind of wanted to evade from it, so I didn't pressure him. But but I seen them as people, but at the same time, the playfulness in them, um, and to that, I would also like to say that because of their, how babies just have this different color. I think they were very young. And that's why they were so clean. The bottoms of their feet and the palms of their hand. I got to see glimpses of the palms of their hand as they were running, and and their face was so clean and so tan, light tan, and they were both like in retrospect they were both very neat, like they weren't sloppy, they weren't matted, they weren't mangy. Uh, and for that, I don't feel if they were little people, they might be of any age, but these seemed very adolescent and very young. And if I go with my gut, these were baby Bigfoot.
Yeah, it does sound like it. And what time of year did this occur?
I believe it was summer. It's Florida, and it's hard to say. The left side of us was very swampy, but the right side of us, there was just little patches of puddles because it's very much swampland. It's a rainforest. But in that area where they were running, they were not running through the water. They were just kind of on the side of the road in the foliage. But I feel like it was early summer, like Mayish, something like that.
Okay, very good. And did you mention what color these creatures were? I know you said it had like a tan, leathery look.
Yeah,
But
they seemed to be kind of a dirty blonde color, and it was like wasn't one solid color. It was a mixture of a little bit darker beige and lighter beige and even a little white in it. Very clean. I mean, I hate to use this scenario, but I mean, a lot like a teddy bear that your kid plays with. It kind of was like that, but fully functional and running and very much alive.
Yeah, that's awesome. And did you say your wife saw the creature too?
She did not. She was just driving. At that point, we drove another 10 minutes. I mean, we were deep. I mean, we was already 15 minutes in a drive. We drove another 10. I don't know how many miles we went in there, but I thought, gosh, this is. We had to be 5, 6 miles deep in this stuff. It was very thick, and again, it's this very primitive land. This is nothing but gator snakes and orchids from all over. Like no other, and it's a very primeval area, very primitive there. There's no life other than wildlife there, except when you encounter it. I know it's known for a lot of Florida panthers, and those they seek refuge in very very primitive areas because they're very standoffish, and that's really the critters that are out there. Many snakes, many varieties of snakes and alligators, and just all kinds of wildlife, birds. It's a sanctuary, and it's said that it's one of the it's America's rainforest, Amazon. That's what they call the area.
Yeah, I don't know what other creature that would be, and deer don't do that, and I don't know. I've heard a lot of reports of Sasquatch or the skunk ape, swamp ape, whatever you want to call it, in Florida, and typically they're a lot smaller, but that's not to say that they don't get really big there. But yeah, that's
Right.
that's possibly what it was, and I do appreciate you for sharing that. What else happened
Yeah. I mean,
on this journey? Can you
yeah.
explain more of what you've experienced?
On this particular event.
No, what happened after this?
Oh, after this, yes. It's funny because it's often said that when you see it the first time, there's a good chance you might see things again. And in my case, it stands true. That was about 2013. That experience. My other experiences happened in North Georgia. And in North Georgia, my wife's family has a cabin there, and it's almost North Carolina. It's real close to the Chattahoochee Forest. It's beautiful country. It's God's country, but it's very much horse farms and hobby farms, and just beautiful. It's absolute serenity, and just there's nowhere you can go on a drive and just not be in awe of the beauty around you. So. Uh, I was introduced to it in 2011. My wife brought me there, and yeah, I was taken aback by its splendor. So I've gone, ever since. I've gone, at least once a year we go and we make repairs and work on the cabin, and we just enjoy it, kind of like a workation. So when I went there, I had some interesting things that took place. Um, When I went one time, I believe it was summer. I'm pretty sure it was again maybe early summer. But there was definitely the trees weren't as thick as they can be. So I would again shoot for April or May at this time that I was there, and we were working. I remember it's kind of cold. Still gets a little cold there, and it's kind of on a mountain. It's up there. With us when it does snow up there. Down below us, the snow will melt, but it'll still kind of linger up there with us. So it's high enough you're climbing up to the mountain to get to where the property is. They have 8 acres there, and it's surrounded by just a few houses, not too many. It's pretty primitive, and definitely it's just nothing but trees, logging roads, and power line clearings here and there, but beautiful. And I was one particular time. This time, I remember we were basically having a fire, and we do that. Every night's like a Saturday night there for us because we're basically vacationing, so we could have fire at any time and just drink some beers and hang out by the fire, hooting and hollering like city folks because we're out there, enjoying our vacation. So we'd get these good bonfires going, and we'd get having some good fun. Making a lot of noise, but we're not the quietest bunch. The beers are going down, and we'd get some good bonfires going. Man, we'd make a lot of noise. I imagine if there's something out there, that wants to see what's going on, you're going to hear us, you know. And you know, the neighbors, the poor neighbors. I hope they. I've never had a problem or heard anything about, you know, keep it quiet over there or whatever. But I mean, we tend to be up till 2 a.m. at times. You know, kind of raising Cain down there at the creek line where we have the bonfire pit. So I remember everybody was kind of backing down. It was like, you know, I kind of watch people dissipate. I'm usually like one of the last ones by the fire. And a friend of mine, he was out there with me, and I sat out there by the fire, and I realized I was kind of, you know, nobody's coming back out. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go up there, and I guess everybody's turning in. The fire was down to pretty much coals. So, I'd say it was about 2 a.m. And so as you know, it's a pretty big property. So when I went up the hill to get around going towards the door, I see my buddy. He's out there by the gravel road, just standing there holding his beer, and he's looking. And I said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And he says, "Hey, come here." He's quiet about it. He says, "Come here, look." So I walk over there to him. I said, "What's going on, man?" And he says, "Look over there." And I look over there, and I say, "Where? You know, what are you seeing?" And he says, "Look, right here where I'm pointing." So I got right behind him. He put his hand in front of me, and I saw these eyes shining, these amber eyes. And they struck me as, I'm like, I said, "Are those, what do you think, those are deer?" And it just wasn't a location where deer would really want to bed down. There's so many great places for deer to bed down there that it didn't seem like a very functional place for deer to be bedding down for the evening. It's a very cliffy spot, very rocky, a lot of small trees and larger trees, all on a steep angle. The area, we know from the daytime where we were seeing these eyes, what kind of terrain's over there, and it was in a kind of a funny spot. Well, as we're watching these eyes, I'd say there's 4 to 5 sets of them, and there was times when I seen them blink, and there was times when they would turn left and turn right, but they were very much forward facing. You know, like not like a deer, but more like, you know, like a face like we have. And I couldn't see anything else. It was in the pitch black, but they were clearly eyes, and it was clearly 4 to 5 sets of them. It was just kind of unique that we sat there and looked. And then as we're watching, I'm like, "God, what is that?" And we were just both perplexed, looking, not moving from where we were, but watching. And we could see the movement, the turning of the heads, the up and down, and we didn't know what we were looking at, and to this day we don't. But at all of a sudden, as we were talking, all these eyes went down, and almost simultaneously. And so we're looking at 4 or 5 pairs of eyes, and they're still visible. We can still see the eyes, but they went from say 6 foot, let's say, down to 3 foot, all at the same time. And that was very peculiar, because and when I saw that, you know, I said, you know, I really don't need to explore this anymore. All I'm thinking is, I've had a good night, and I said to my buddy, I said, "Well, I'm going in. Are you staying here?" And he says, "No, I'm going with you." And we went in the house straight away, because there was nothing more to see there. But it was very peculiar and very odd, and it was as though they were just watching us. I mean, like I say, clearly, you know, just a couple hours before that, we were fit to be tied. We were out there, 5 of us, making loud noise, hooting and hollering, slamming beers, you know, to where it's pouring down our goatees, and just having fun. And we make a lot of noise. And we had the fire blazing up to 12 foot high at some points. We kind of don't mess around when we build a fire. So we did cause some excitement on the mountain, as we've done before. And we went on in at that point and said, "You know, well, we've had enough of that." But we were the last 2 out that night. And I just saw him perplexed by what he was looking at. And I just kind of stumbled on that, because I thought he was already in the house. I got to witness that with him. But oddly, on that same trip, we have this area where we collect firewood from like fallen pines. We don't burn pine wood inside, so there's certain wood we burn for the outside fire. And we collect it on a 4-wheeler with a little trailer. And I had already gone and got some of this firewood from this spot where we always collected. There's a lot of deadfall in this, right along the driveway where we're coming in. And there's a lot of wood to clean up in there, and it's just an easy pickings. It's not far off the road and the driveway. and we just go grab some what we need, and it'll get us through the night. If we do 2 or 3 trips down there, we can have a heck of a good fire. So I'm cruising through there the next day, and oddly, I just walked it 2 days prior because I collected that wood that we burned, the night that we saw the amber eyes. I I remember no, I walk things. I'm very observant, and I walk that area very thoroughly. And right in the open, and by next to a little tree had fallen there, probably 30, 40 foot long log. It had probably long fallen. There wasn't a limb on it. It was just with no bark on it or anything. And on top of that limb, there was a variety of rocks stacked upon each other. One as big as your palm, all the way down to about as the size of a half a dollar on top. There's 4 of them. Now, I wish I would have took a picture. I got a picture in my mind. That's it. I didn't take a picture. I just kind of don't roll like that. In hindsight, I probably should have done it. But I remember looking at it and going, "What is that?" And there's, mind you, I've got no little kids there. There's no kids around the property on this trip. I walked through this area just a couple days, 2 days before, to collect this wood. I know I walked through there because it's just a certain area. You can't miss that spot. And you couldn't help but see this rock stack. And what's unusual about these rocks is there's rocks everywhere around there. There's quartz and rock, and there's a creek, and there's rock everywhere. But what's unusual about these rocks is they were so smooth. All of them were very smooth edges, flat, looked like little pancakes. It looked like a little pancake stack, with each one upon the other being slightly smaller, till the 4th one was, like I say, as big as a half dollar. But they were all so smooth. And I thought that, who did that? What put that there? I mean, it's no bear did that. It's no deer did that. And again, there's no little kids there. And adults aren't doing that. And where did they find these special rocks? These were special. If you look throughout the terrain, these make no sense. These rocks were perfect. And they were stacked on this log. And I looked at it and I showed somebody that. Oddly enough, it was my son who, denied seeing what we saw in the Everglades. And I said, "Hey, look, I got to show you something." And I pulled him up there on the 4-wheeler to show him. I said, "Look." He says, "Dad, you did that." I said, "No, man, I didn't do that." So now I find myself, he scrutinizing me, acting like I set this up. I did not, of course. And so I realized I took the wrong person over there to see it. I did show it to somebody else, and they thought, "Wow, that's weird." But, at that point, I think I'm the only one that realizes that was not a setup. There's nobody that put those in. I didn't do it. And I still had to wonder who could find such rocks, and who would stack them there, and what's the reason they stacked them there. And it's in the very close vicinity of where we saw these amber eyes, probably within 40 yards. And this stack's just sitting on that thing. And it just wasn't there 2 days before that. In this same trip, I remember going about 3 or so in the morning, 2 in the morning, still working on the house. Some people are sleeping. I'm in there tinkering with stuff, trying to fix outlets and stuff. And I keep looking for screws. We have a shed out by the back door. So it's probably 30 feet away, 40 feet away from the back door. It's a little walk. And I remember going out the door. And as soon as I went out the door and started walking across the deck, I hear this owl, whoo, hitting me. And I'm like, oh, and it's pretty good deep, throw the owl. He's definitely right by the shed. And so I went out there, looking for a couple screws. And of course, I'll be back. I don't know it. So I go back in, start trying to work on what I was working on. Of course, I don't got the right screws. 10 minutes later, I'm going back out there to the shed again. As soon as I hit that deck, I hear that owl again, that same call. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's an owl over there. And again, this is in that same trip. And I go to the shed. And so I go back in, and I don't really think nothing of it. To me, it's an owl. And then, of course, I don't got the right screw yet. I'm just like anybody else. I'm going out there for the 3rd time. Again, it's 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm working on something diligently, trying to fix something. And I go out to the shed. As soon as I hit them steps again, right when I come out there, I hear that owl. This happened 4 times in that evening, on 4 separate occasions, where just on cue, as soon as my foot maybe hit that deck with 3 steps, this owl called out. And now, at the time, I didn't think nothing of it. I'm just thinking, it sounded like a perfect owl. But in hindsight, that's kind of peculiar. I won't forget, because on the fourth time, I will admit, it kind of spooked me, because the first three times I can kind of go with that, but that fourth time I was almost saying, I wonder, before I stepped out, I'm like, I wonder if I hear that owl again. And by that time, everybody's sleeping, so I got nobody to get involved on this. But it was very peculiar that in this instance of this Georgia trip, all these things happen at the same time. Now, again, we bring a level of excitement to the mountain, because it's normally a very quiet mountain, very quiet people, not a lot of noise at night, not a lot of life at night. People don't even go out at night. And this is the Bible Belt. This was formerly a dry town. People don't drink. You can't even buy liquor here. It's just not. It's not the way. You ain't getting beer on Sundays. If you forget Saturday, you're not drinking till Monday, or you're leaving the state to go get it. So it's a different place, and we do bring a level of excitement. So I could see where we might draw attention to something that might be curious, and I can kind of leave it at that, because I don't know really what that owl was doing, but every time I walked out there, this owl is giving me a holler, and that, like I say, that fourth time. I don't think I walked to the shed. I think I turned around and walked right back in the house and said, I'm done with this. And I think I finished that project without finishing it. But that was that time. Now, a different time going there, my son had just got through weed whacking what we call the meadow down on the east side. There's a nice little 1 acre meadow right down by the creek, and it sits below the cabin. It's always pretty. We can look out the east side of the house with the windows, or get on a balcony and look down there. And that's kind of where we cut up on the 4-wheeler and do donuts and stuff. It's kind of a little fun spot where we'll do, set up a target and practice shooting and stuff. And we call it the meadow, for lack of a better term. It's just clean grass and just a real pretty area. And it's a flat spot. And it's about the only flat spot around in that area. And I was down there after he had weed whacked all day, and he did that whole thing that should have been done with a mower, and he just went into beast mode, and he weed whacked that whole acre with a weed whacker. He just went to, and it looked great. And I said, well, I'm gonna go down there and take a look at that. I walked down there, and everybody was up in the house. I don't know what was going on. Everybody kind of does their own thing, and I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna walk down there. I think I had a soda in my hand. I went down there and went kind of toward the creek, and just kind of looking at things, and out of nowhere, I got this feeling again, like something's watching me. And again, not to the level of, like I explained, that I felt in New York, but the same intensity of knowing without seeing that something is truly watching me. Something has its eyes on. Something is observing me, and the shackles went up on my neck, and it was daytime. I mean, it was getting dark. Again, no other thought. My mind was just there was no thought of anything strange or anything peculiar walking down there. I was just taking in nature, doing my little walk. But when I got near that very corner, like where it gets quite primitive, where I know nobody really walks around, because it's not conducive for hiking or walking. The creek strolls through there. There's some big boulders, fallen trees everywhere, and it's very primitive. It's just there's no activity back there. No neighbors go back there or anything. But I knew, being in that corner, that something was I felt completely without question that something was watching me, and I just remember feeling uneasy. And well, what I have learned since New York is go with your gut. And it was fearful, but it wasn't the immense fear that I had in New York. With that said, it was telling me to leave. It was maybe telling me I was too close, not verbally, or not in my head, not by mind speak or anything, but something in me told me, get away. I'm getting too close to something, and something's observing me, and would rather I not. And I remember walking away, on our own property, without any qualm about it. Okay, if it's your time here on the creek, I'm going to walk. I never saw anything, didn't hear anything, didn't smell anything, but that feeling out of nowhere. It's funny because we're left with this innate sense that we all have, and I know that now because of what happened to me in New York. That we do have a sense that we don't know about as humans, and in the moment that might happen, that you will be enlightened to the point that you might even come up with the answer to evade and escape, like I did, and it's a true sense that we probably we don't know. It's a sense you don't know you use, you don't know you have, but it's there. And I'd like anybody to know that if you ever get this feeling, trust it. Go with your gut and evade, get away, escape, and trust it, because you have a sense that you're not aware of. And I wasn't aware of it either. But I know now through that time and through this time that there's something that can tell you you're not in a safe place. And so that happened on that same property. And that was definitely an experience that I knew. I just walked away and I realized, you know what, there could be things here, as beautiful and as splendor as it is, there could be things here, that we share this mountain with. And, I put that to my mind, and I don't feel any malevolence at any of this, from the rock stacking to the shining eyes to that feeling in the meadow. I didn't get a malevolent feeling, I will say, like I got in New York. There's a difference between malevolence and the other. And thankfully I didn't have that feeling. Now, something that Georgia also spawned was my second sighting. And that was one night in the summer, leaving the property to go back to Florida. We often bring material and tools up to Georgia to work on the cabin. So obviously on the way back, I'm pulling a trailer with tools and whatnot in it, and that's in tow. We decided we like to travel at night because we got to go through Atlanta. It's nice to go through there at a good time when traffic isn't bad, because that can be really bad if you catch it at the wrong time. So we were leaving at about 10 o'clock at night, 10:30. And so we went down the mountain and we got on the main 4-lane road and we started cruising down it. And, it's funny because nobody, unless you have to be out there, you see very few cars on the road at night in the country, I've noticed. We're in the city, you'll get up at 2 in the morning, you'll go down to the 7-Eleven, get you some chips. You don't think nothing of it. That don't happen in the country. People aren't going to the store to get chips at 2 in the morning. It's a whole different story. So you kind of realize that when you spend a little time there. You go to the store, you get your stuff, and you make it count, because you're not going to be taking them little store trips like you do in the city. And with that said, there's just not a lot of cars on the road, not a lot of traffic. And I wasn't on the main road, for maybe 10 minutes. And we were cresting a pretty good hill, and I got a diesel truck, and it's just kind of pushing along, pulling this trailer. I'm not trying to fly. I'm in no hurry. I'm not trying to beat the truck up. I got a long way. I got 550 miles to go to get home. I don't want no breakdown. So I'm just kind of letting the truck make it up this hill. And as I'm cruising up the hill, I'm probably at top speed of 40 miles an hour when I kind of get toward the top. And out of my peripheral vision, my headlights catch something to the right. Now, mind you, I got 2 friends with me. I got one in the passenger seat, one in the back seat. It's a 4-door Chevrolet 1-ton truck. And I realize there's something off to my right, to the right shoulder of the road. Now, I'm in the left lane. And I go to looking, and I can see my light hitting something. And I see the back of something that's huge. I'll just say he's huge. And it's out of the ordinary. This isn't something supposed to be there. It's not ordinarily there. And I just keep looking. And I'm going slow enough that I don't even got to look at the road. I'm not going to run off the road at this speed. And I'm still cresting that hill. But at this point, as soon as I spotted it, I just let off the throttle. But I am cresting. I'm hitting the top of the hill where it lays out and levels out. And I see this figure on the right side of the road, and it is just frozen right 5 feet off the yellow line. is this creature, and I'll say it's hairy. It's at least 4 feet wide at the shoulders. I see no head. I see no arms. I see what could be elbows, and it's turned in a position to where even when I pass it, there's no way I'm going to see the front of it. It's actually angled itself in the perfect place so that when I drive by, I see nothing in the front of it. But it was just solid hair. The color would be probably kind of like brown, not so much dark brown, but brown, different shades of brown with maybe a little reddish in it. That's what my headlights kind of exposed. And super wide. I saw a bit of a V in the back, but not, I couldn't see definition. Very hairy. This hair was long. And it was a brief, probably, God, if I had 3.5 seconds to visualize this, like I say, I rubbernecked it. I watched the whole time as I was passing by. And it was quick, because once your lights lose sight of whatever you're trying to see off the side of your truck, you're not seeing anything, because this is blacker than black up there at night. There's no street lights. There's no ambient lighting. It's just plain black. So as I'm cruising by this thing and seeing this, at the point I get to where I barely can see it, in the last millisecond, if you will, I look towards the bottom of this thing. Again, I still can't see arms. I can't see hands. Can't see face. I just know it's tall and it's wide and it's hairy. And at the very last millisecond, I look down on the low side of it, and I see a deer's head with blood coming out of its mouth. And boom, the lights go out. It gets dark, and I can't see nothing anymore. I turn back forward, and I say to my buddies, "You guys see that?" Because I assumed one of them was looking. Well, the guy next to me in the passenger seat, I'm looking beyond him to try to see this thing. He's asleep with his hat over his eyes. He's not paying attention. And right when I seen it, I said, "You guys see that?" And the guy in the back said, "What?" And he had his face in the phone, looking at. Because finally, when you get to the road, you start getting some. Your phone works. Up on a mountain, sometimes it don't work. As soon as we get down there, everybody starts wanting to tinker with their phone. So bad timing for him. He happened to be having his face in the phone, and he just said, "What?" And so right at that time, just by perfect timing, there happened to be a turn lane, and I could have just quickly turned to the left. By the way, I'm slowed down now. I'm probably doing 30 miles an hour because I never hit the gas once I spotted the creature. And I'm thinking, I could just do a U-E. They'll see what's going on. What is this thing? And before I had time to think about it, and I thought, I don't want to. I mean, a little bit of fear crept in. This thing was big. There was no doubt that this was nothing I wanted to tangle with. I'm kind of on my own with the visual. They didn't even see it. And by the time I do actually get turned around, this thing's going to know that I'm messing with it. And do I want to be in a situation where this thing knows I'm messing with it? I'm not, I might be crazy, but I'm not stupid. And I did not want, I had enough time to think about it and say, no, I'm just going to keep going straight. And that's what I did. But what I saw is what I saw. And it was very limited. That visual was very limited on what I seen. But I can tell you that back was no less than 4 foot wide. I could see a slight crease where the arm might have been in the shoulder, but not really. The hair was so thick on the back of its arms and its back that you really couldn't see that line. But it appeared that as if you tucked your arms in and your elbows in and positioned your body with your head down, like a child might want to hide behind a tree and just like not be seen. It had that effect that it just wanted to not be seen by me. One, it might have saw that I was in the left lane and figured, well, there's a good chance it's not going to see me. Well, that didn't work. I've heard that there's been people say that they have possibly some of these creatures have the ability to cloak. Well, this was a perfect time to cloak. So I don't think this one had that ability, because this would have been a great time to just disappear. You could tell by his standing still and by his demeanor that he did not want to be seen, and he was doing his best just to not be. And it didn't work. And I don't know which direction he came from to get to this deer. Clearly this deer was hit prior to me coming down the road. and he was on the side of the road. There was blood that I seen by its feet. I couldn't see its feet real good. Having said that, just the light, the last little bit of bright light that's coming off the side of my headlight, I happened to just see that deer head, which I'm so grateful that I did, because that made more sense why this thing was there. But it was just a mass, like a wall, if you will, of hair, and the whole back. If it was a bear, it was a brown bear or a grizzly bear, and his butt was 7 foot tall, because this thing was taller than my truck by far. And I know my truck's about 6 foot tall with the motor tires on it, and he was over my truck. And again, he's only 15 feet away from me as I'm cruising by. So this thing was a heck of a specimen of a creature. I definitely know that it would nothing would trifle with this thing. There's no way, and it made it easy for my decision not to do a U and let my curiosity get the best of me. But I do know there was a steep hill where the land was near this carcass, and possibly, he would have had to just run down the steep part of this hill because if he's getting away from me, he can't run across the road as he sees my headlights coming. He would have to go the way he was. And I do know it was a steep spot. So he might have been torn by, as creatures, we take the path of less resistance. And he's a creature as well. And he might have thought, well, if I'm just going to ride this out, because I don't want to go all the way down this hill and come back up to get this. Or he could have been picking it up, and I could have saw him carrying it off the whole time. He elected to just freeze and just hope for the best. And, in hindsight, he picked the right one, because what did I do to change his night? Not a thing. So quite amazing to see that. I'm just a little disappointed in my friends not having any observancy skills and not helping me navigate the night. But that's their loss. But that was another one of my Georgia experiences where I actually had a sighting. And to that, I didn't see the feet. I didn't even see, where the legs separated. It's as if it slammed its legs together and its arms tight against its body and put his arms against his heart, if you will, and tucked his head down. Like if you were doing a jackknife going off the diving board. That's the way it seemed to be standing there. And gratefully I saw the deer head at the last second, because then it kind of came to me. And I was also kind of, happy to see, that, hey, maybe these deer ain't going to waste. We've all seen a lot of these, sadly, these carcasses on the side of the road. And, he was obviously coming there to get a fresh kill and really recycling nature. And really, in a nutshell, I think that's kind of it for most of my experiences, Miguel, and my sightings.
All right, Greg. Well, I really appreciate you for sharing that with me. And it sounds like the creature you encountered in Georgia was looking for roadkill. Do you think that's what was going on?
I think so. And I just happened to be at the right timing. I think he might have just got to it, and he might have thought, well, maybe I can beat the headlights, or his timing might have been a little bit off. But yeah, he was surely, it appeared his feet, he was hovering over this deer. So he was getting ready. By all appearances, he was ready to grab it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I've taken a lot of reports from people in the past where they encounter this strange Bigfoot creature, and it's picking up like a dead dog or a dead deer in the middle of the road, and it just doesn't pay attention to people. I think they get distracted in these moments, and yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people have experienced the same thing, and I've heard several reports off of Sasquatch Chronicles, and the people on Wes's show talk about the same exact thing. What time of year did this occur?
That was, I think that was a little more. I remember it being kind of cold, so I would think that was more like. I would more say springtime. I would throw that into the more February, March time, because I'm thinking more like March, because I kind of remember when we were leaving the house. I always relate it to what I see on the trees, and I remember it being, kind of bare and what you could see through the trees. So the trees weren't coming. It wasn't the leaves weren't coming on the trees yet. So I would say March.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate you for sharing that. Earlier off air, you said some of these encounters were somewhat close to the Bigfoot Museum. I don't want to give away the location, but
Yes,
how
yes,
how far
that
away was that
one,
encounter from the Bigfoot
that
Museum?
was that one very one where it stood there frozen was on the 515, which is probably, I would say it was probably 15 miles north of Bigfoot Expedition on the 515 in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Yeah, that's an amazing place, and there's a lot of forest there, and it made me wonder whenever I went to Bigfoot Expedition, maybe these people had a Bigfoot encounter in this area, and that's why they created the Bigfoot Museum. And by looking around the area, I think that could very well be. I didn't talk to the owner because he wasn't there, but his wife was there, and I didn't really ask too many questions, but I just kind of got the impression that, hey, these people have probably seen some stuff, and that's why they're doing what they do.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think they're the kind of people that too that like so many other places in the country, they might be kind of tight-lipped about it, even though being from a rural area, that sometimes people less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever you encountered the eye shine, that sounds pretty unusual, and it sounds similar to an encounter that I had here in Missouri where the eyes were about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and what I encountered went up to 10 feet plus, and it went up like an
Wow.
elevator. You said that it was about 6 feet, but that's unusual for a deer. That's pretty darn high. So yeah,
Yeah,
that does sound like a cryptid creature to me, and it's hard to tell
it was
whenever it's
on an
dark out.
yeah, it was on an incline, a decline too, Miguel. So when I say 6 feet, I mean I don't know exactly how tall it was, because the ground was changing formation there, and because it's about 40 yards away, but I know it drops and it goes back down toward the creek. So they could have been a lot higher. It's hard to say where their feet were behind those trees, so it wasn't level ground that I was looking at. But opposite of yours, I think I think our eye shine was up and they went down instead. Like we were talking, and it might have known something you were saying about what do you think they are or whatever. It might picked up on our sentences and realized, hey, they see us, because they all went down at the almost simultaneously, just the opposite of yours going up.
Yeah. So do you think they were attracted to the fire?
I think they were. I think we drew them in, and their curiosity. I mean, I would imagine if they're not hunting or foraging or if they're nocturnal and they're just doing, trying to fill the time like humans do, that we're probably pretty interesting, and I'd like to think that my clan's pretty interesting there with the hooting and hollering and the fire, because again, there's nothing in the area going on at any house for miles around except this house, because again, we're there vacationing, and I could see where curiosity would step in, and they might just come over, let's go look at this, the same way we watch TV. We might be their TV.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. These creatures could have been in the area and they see the fire from a distance and they can hear people talking, having a good time, and they're like, "Hey, I want to go there and check out what's going on." It's their territory, and they're curious by nature.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think they're too far apart from us, other than the obvious.
Yeah.
And I got to ask you, Miguel. It's interesting that you tell me that it's not uncommon for them to be picking up a carcass and hauling it off without thought of anyone around them. But what have you ever heard anything in regards to this rock stacking
Yeah,
or stone
absolutely.
stacking?
I've heard a lot of people talk about that, and I've found rocks stacked. It was deep in a conservation area. It's where I've been having a lot of experiences. I found a bunch of tree structures there, and I was surrounded and whatnot. And they did wood knocks around me one night. Another time, I took a buddy there, the Ozark Harry Man, and we sat there until it got dark, and they started wood knocking, and we could see them on thermal, but it's your typical blob squatch because they were all the way across on the other ridge. But in that same area, one time I went past the tree structures and I was trying to see what else I could find, and I got to this area where there were these wooden fence posts deep in the wilderness. You can tell it was an area that is overgrown. Maybe there was something there in the past, but there was these three rocks that were stacked up on one another, and it looked like obsidian, like real shiny rock that got blasted out of a cave, but they were stacked up like, I don't know how to explain it, like in a triangle formation, like maybe two on the bottom and one on top, and it was sitting on the fence post. And I thought that was unusual because this is the area where the Sasquatch are typically at and where I've had the most activity. I can't say if somebody did that and stacked them up on that fence post, but I mean, this is deep in the woods and it was just unusual. I know that they say that hikers will stack rocks, or I don't know, maybe they do it if they're lost, but I think Sasquatch do it as well. I think a lot of things that people do, the Sasquatch will do. So it's hard to tell, but yeah, the Sasquatch will stack rocks, and I don't know exactly what that means, and it's happening all over North America and probably all over the world.
I wonder if it's a gesture of, hey, we're here. There's four of us, as into four stones, or this is our boundary, or you can only sit and speculate. But it does strike me curious because, like, why is there exactly four rocks? Why are they all different sizes? And if you were collecting these, specimens of rocks, again, these stood out in the whole area because there's rocks all over the place, but none of them were smooth and rounded, almost like they were shapen, or possibly like you said with the obsidian, maybe they found them, but you would have to go through thousands of rocks to find these. These would be special among these creatures, I would assume, to find these. Is that something, almost like currency to them? Like, whoa, look at this rock, and they might show another, sibling, hey, look what I found. It's just funny. It's curious as to how, like you said, it was special. It wasn't even a normal rock. It was special. So, I mean, it's very fascinating to try to think about that and understand what that meant, because I told you I saw, it feels like at least four, I say four to five eye shines from four different creatures. And then I see exactly four rocks. So, and it's a day later or 2 days later. So, I mean, what I'm trying to put, I don't know if there's a connection, but I mean, and then again, our eyes are quick to recognize something, but our mind never ends in processing it. So our eyes are just so fast. But days later, I'm still thinking about what were those rocks about? What was that stack of stones about? And it's just amazing to the level that your mind goes to try to make some sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important if people are ever gifted rocks or you find these rock stacks to closely analyze it to see if there's something more to it. And I won't elaborate too much on it, but one of my guests in the past that passed away, he had a pile of rocks stacked up on his porch, and whenever he passed away, I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep these rocks because some of them were extremely smooth, and they were just completely different from one another, and I thought it was pretty unique. It was cool to have a pile of rocks that the Sasquatch held in their own hands, and
wow.
Whenever, yeah, I had it sitting in my house for months, and I pulled out one of the rocks. It was a big chunk of crystal ore, like it had crystal in it. It had iron in it. You could tell there was like copper deposits. And I was sitting there one day thinking about my friend Dennis, and I was like, man, that really sucks that he passed away. I'm glad I picked up these rocks because they're extremely unique. Well, I started looking at that crystal rock, and I started seeing little veins of gold on it, and the more I started analyzing it, it was covered in gold. I haven't been able to split it because, like I said, there's iron in it, and it's like solid metal. I tried taking this saw and like cutting it in half to see if it's like solid gold, but from the outside you can tell there's all kinds of veins of gold mixed with copper and just a lot of crystal in it. But I don't know, I've had other guests in the past that said they were gifted these strange crystals, and I mean, they kind of look like diamonds. I'm like, what the heck? These creatures are extremely intelligent. And the thing about Dennis was he was in a really hard place, and he was about to, pretty much lose everything he had. I almost feel like the Sasquatch picked up on that, and they're like, hey, here's a big pile of gold. He never noticed it. I never noticed it, and I wouldn't have took it from him if I did. I just took it because he was gone, and you know, it was a Sasquatch artifact. But I've had them gift me rocks here, and I look closely at them, and they had iron in them. But sometimes you never know if there's more to it. They say the Sumerians or the Anunnaki came here from another planet to mine gold, and you know, it has a lot to do with the giants. And you never know if that's what these creatures are doing. They're extremely intelligent. They know things that, I mean, would blow your mind. So it's hard to say. So yeah, if you find more rocks that you think are attributed to Sasquatch, take a closer look at the rock.
Yes, I in hindsight, I don't know why I didn't get a picture of that. I mean, when I travel away from the cabin, I don't carry the phone around with me. I'm kind of old school that way. And but I knew about it. I could have went back, took a picture, and I also knew I'm not going to touch them. I just kind of left them there because they were on this log. Kind of like. And I wasn't sure, like they could still be there. I don't think anybody. I feel like I'm the only one going and grabbing the firewood half the time, so they might still be there. I'll check it out next time I go. But I mean, I knew it was peculiar. I knew there was no kids that could have done that, and it was just right around that time, Miguel, that all that other activity was going on with the owl. And again, I'm kind of in the city here. Like, the owls just hoot at people. Like, I mean, is that normal? Like, when you walk outside, oh, here he goes again. Like, is he talking to you as a person? I mean, it was definitely peculiar to me.
Yeah, I've heard similar reports. I recently interviewed a guy from Kentucky who had several eyesight encounters. He said he was doing work in Florida, and they were all like on the roof working, and all of a sudden owls just started going off everywhere. He said it was unusual because they did it for hours straight, and eventually they sounded completely different from where they started off. Like, they sounded like owls in the beginning, and later on they just sounded completely different. That one guy he mentioned, he referred to, I won't say his name, but he said, this guy is not a believer in cryptids, and he said that's no owl. And yeah,
wow.
I think, they'll mimic owls, and sometimes you just gotta listen to see if it fluctuates to a different vocalization, to maybe something that's like not an owl. Because I've heard, for example, them owl hooting across the Merrimack River here, and one would sound off on one bluff, and across the river it'd answer, and then the other one would go off, and then another one would chime in, and it would hoot back, and then it started barking like a dog. I know that sounds crazy, but it was like, it sounded like a barn owl, like woo, 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 and then it just sounded like a Rottweiler, woo, woo, woo. Like, it was weird.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm making this up,
amazing.
but it definitely happened.
Wow, that's and a testament to what I'm saying too, because that on that fourth time, it didn't sound really altogether different, but it was like, this is just too coincidental, and it actually creeped me out. Where, like, I'm just not going. It was too close to the shed. I don't have good visual in there. It's 3 or 4 in the morning. I mean, and it's forest around this shed. But I mean, again, I didn't feel any malevolent nature to it. But with that said, I mean, like, fourth time was just too much. I'm like, but again, it kind of sounded, in a way, like you're saying, you're listening for a little key difference in sound, but it was more like a key difference in just synchronicity of timing. Like, this thing is hitting me every time I walk out there and get a certain point of the deck. It's like as if hollering to say, hey, dude, over there, this guy's coming out again. I mean, it was almost just too coincidental for me. It wasn't that it didn't sound like an owl. It was just so coincidental that this is the fourth time. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to go get bear hugged by one of these creatures right now. I'm just going back in. I'm giving up on this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had experiences here when I know the Sasquatch were on the property. It was during the same time frame that I encountered them, to where at nighttime I'd hear, I don't know what it's called, like a snow owl, where it almost sounds like a woman moaning, like hoo, hoo, hoo.
Wow.
But it happened like deep in the woods, and it just keep getting closer and closer and closer until it was eventually right at the edge of the wood line. And it wouldn't be high up in the trees. It'd be like 7 foot off the ground. And
right.
It just seems like it targeted me. Like, it knew exactly where I was. And typically it was either one or there'd be 3 of them, and they'd like surround me. And it was just strange. I can't say for sure if it was an owl or if it was Sasquatch mimicking owls, but I truly do believe that the Sasquatch will mimic owls, and they will try to blend in with nature.
you bring up a good point there, because this was not high in a tree. I was hearing it, at about 7, 8 foot high. This thing was, if it was on a tree, it was in the middle of the tree. It was down low on the tree, but it wasn't way up there. Where owls generally, when I've seen them, and I've seen them a lot in Florida too, but they're usually up there where they got a good visual on things. They're night hunters, and being at 8 foot high, that's not the best spot to be when you can be 12 foot higher. So that's kind of peculiar. But when you just said that, I realized that it did feel, and I forgot that detail, but it did feel like it was more eye level with me what I'm hearing. And again, that was kind of what creeped me out a little bit too. This was not way up high in the tree, which would give me a little bit of feeling of ease, knowing that, hey, that's an owl for sure. But coming from that height, uh, I think that's kind of what was finally getting to me, that this is unusual. And I got to ask you, Miguel, have you ever, in your experiences out there, like, you're braver than me for going where you go, but have you ever experienced that feeling of dread that I was speaking of? Because you're in a place and a situation to get that feeling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's this one time where I was standing at the end of the driveway. It's a forested driveway, and then I had these three distinct whistles happen around me. And I mean, they were loud, sharp whistles, almost like a cattle farmer calling in his animals. And I just got a strange vibe. So I went home and thought about it, and then went back up there an hour later. Then I seen these two orange orbs floating through the woods right when it was getting dark. Man, I got this spooky feeling. Well, after that happened, something told me, like, don't go near him, like, don't go closer. I thought it was like people with cell phones or lanterns walking through the woods, but I just got this strange feeling like, don't go towards these lights. So I just kind of brushed it off and was like, maybe it's the neighbors walking through the woods with lights. I don't know, but I'm not going close. Whenever I walked back home, it was completely dark. So at this point, it's pitch black. I'm walking home, and then I hear these three whoops coming at me from the wood line, and it's just whoop, whoop, whoop. And you could hear this creature coming right at me. And right before that happened, I forgot to mention this, I heard this loud thump, like someone picked up a big log and dropped it on the ground. And then I heard the whoops. But whenever that happened right there, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And I remember saying, this is an effed up feeling. And I just walked home like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, something was off, and I didn't know what it was, but the whoops threw me off. And then I was kind of adding up everything during that time and just kind of brushing it off. Like, I'm really, I don't want to say I'm dumb, but it takes me a while to realize that something's going on. And it took seeing these creatures to be like, holy crap, these things really do exist. Because everything I was finding, I just kept brushing it off and saying, maybe it's this, maybe it's mountain lion, maybe it was people walking through the woods, maybe it's crackheads whistling at me and watching me from the wood line. Like, I just brushed it off because, I mean, I wanted to believe, but my mind would immediately go back to, there's something that can be explained here. But yeah, once you see them, there's no going back, and it is what it is.
It's amazing, because it's an innate sense that I never knew I had it. Just like when it was a sense all its own. It's like it blindsides you, because you've never felt that way before, and you're just wondering what's going on with me right now. And it's an incredible feeling, but it's nonetheless definitely a God-given sense that we all have when we are potential prey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when the paranormal takes place, like, that will really kick in your sixth sense. Like, something's off, something's not right. And yeah, it, especially when the dogs are acting up. That's a good way to know that your senses are dead on. And you mentioned it earlier, to follow your gut, that when something's off. And that's very true. A lot of people get in these situations that they know something's not right, whether you're hanging out with a person and they're just off. Like, it's almost like they completely change. Like, who is this person? This isn't the friendly person that I knew. And that something's not right. Or I don't know, if you're around a bunch of people and they're going to start crap with other people around, and you can just tell, like, oh man, a fight's about to break out or something's off. Like, I need to get out of here before I get myself in some trouble.
Right. Yeah, and you got to trust it, because again, you don't know you have that sense, because it's a sixth sense. It's not one of our ordinary senses, and it's out of our realm of really understanding. It's out of our comfort zone. Even it's not a comfortable place to be and feel, and we it's an unusual place for us because we're seeking comfort, not discomfort. But when you do get that feeling, the worst thing you can do is ignore it, because it can come in all walks of life. It could be a day at work, it could be a night out with friends, it could be in the woods, it could be in any situation. Trust the gut, and you really do have a sense that. And I hope a lot of people don't ever have to experience this feeling of dread and all encompassing fear, because I mean, I just felt in my one experience that I mean, as if the Grim Reaper himself was just going to take me, and it was it was imminent. There was no escaping it, and it's not. It's a terrible feeling, and I do feel too like if I turned around and locked eyes with it, that would have been the worst thing. Like that would have been the last thing I ever did. So I think also God affords us this sense, and also the sense to know what to do in that situation, because something told me, don't look back, and just leave the way you came, and don't let your curiosity get the best of you. Just go. And I listened to that other voice inside me, and so all from the greater good, I escaped it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people wonder, like, I don't hear God's voice. Like, I've never heard God's voice, but I think he hardwired us to have this knowing, and that's how he speaks to us, by entering these situations and having that gut feeling that something's off. And I think that's God talking to us. And I think a lot of times people ignore it. I do it myself, and when you ignore it, you have to face the consequences, and you look back and think, man, why did I not follow my gut? But we're hardwired for these situations, and you just got to listen to your gut.
That's an interesting take on that, Miguel, because that really opens doors to, are we listening to God, or we just think we're always talking? Sometimes he's talking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. It's hard to distinguish the two, but sometimes you just have to trust your gut feeling, because if you think back on moments in the past where you've listened to your gut, you'll thank yourself. You're like, man, I'm really glad I listened to my gut feeling, or else such and such would have happened.
This is true. Yes. And you got to be honest with yourself in that moment and realize, God got me through that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like in the little things in life, even if it's like a relationship. Sometimes, like, you shouldn't be with a certain person. They keep causing havoc or drama or pain in your life, and something tells you to get out, but you don't, and then eventually you have to face the consequences, or a really bad storm. But
yeah,
it's hard to do that, sometimes, because you just want to follow your feelings and emotions, but sometimes your body's trying to warn you about something.
Yes, and yeah, I think that aligns with that sixth sense that we're speaking of, that we probably should find a way to tap into it more. But it and you enlighten me, because is it just should we just go to God, because that might just be where we got to go. That might be the sixth sense right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes there's not an answer for a situation, but you just try to make the best decision as possible. And if it was the wrong decision, you'll realize it, and you'll learn from it, and move on from there. That's all we can really do.
That's right.
But yeah, Greg, I think that pretty well covers your encounters and experiences, and it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And yeah, I really enjoyed hearing your encounters from New York, Georgia, and Florida, and I definitely think you had Sasquatch encounters and experiences, and I'm glad you called in and contacted me.
Oh, you bet. And it's my pleasure to share that with you and all your listeners. And I do appreciate your channel. I'm a diligent listener, and I will continue to listen to your podcast. It's always intriguing to me, and you know, the smarter you get, the more you realize how dumb you really are. With every bit of knowledge you take in, it just opens up more questions. You know, we'll never stop learning until the day we die. So I look forward to future podcasts and just kind of sharing information with others and hearing information with others, and you know, maybe getting some answers and maybe even finding ourselves in the process. But I do appreciate you, and I appreciate your time, and you know, I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope the best for you and your family, and I hope you're safe at work. And if you ever encounter anything in the future, feel free to reach back out to me, and I would be glad to speak with you about anything that you experience.
Most definitely. Most definitely. You're first on my list, and you're the only time I've spoke to anybody about this in any podcast. So I just want to share that with you. You know, you're my one and only on this topic.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I appreciate your kindness today. And yeah, just reach out if you ever experience anything else, or if you have any questions, my friend.
You bet. And thank you. You do the same. And God bless you and all your listeners.
All right. God bless, my friend, and I will talk with you later.
Thank you very much. Be well.
All right. Take care. Bye. All right, Greg, thank you very much for sharing your encounters here on Sasquatch Theory. And your encounters in Florida were certainly interesting. It did sound like there were two juveniles running alongside of the vehicle, and a lot of people have claimed that whenever they're riding through forested roads, there's a figure running in the background. And I think that's what the juveniles were doing. They were possibly playing and doing their routine thing for the day. But it very well could have been little people. I'm not sure. I've never seen a little person before, but I've heard a lot of other people talk about it. And I'm not sure if they're in Florida, but it very well could be. But at this point, I do think it was two juveniles playing in the forest. Your encounter in Georgia was certainly interesting as well, and I think they were attracted to the sounds of people talking, the fire, and you happened to see the eye shine, which is reported a lot by many people. They see eye shine in the forest, whether it's this yellow color, this yellow greenish color, or even sometimes red. But yeah, I think they were watching you guys, and they were very curious as to what was going on. And the encounter that you had where you were driving and you seen this bipedal creature, I think that possibly could have been Sasquatch as well. I mean, I don't know what else it would have been, but I have to go off of what you said, and I think that you know very well what a deer looks like, what a raccoon looks like, and what a Sasquatch looks like. And a lot of people, even though they haven't seen a bear in person, they know what they look like on TV. Even if they stand up, they're kind of goofy. Sometimes whenever you see these bipedal creatures, you can easily say maybe that was a bear. But in this case, I think it was Sasquatch. All right, that's all we have for today, and I really appreciate everyone's support. Be safe out there, and take care.